when you guys first moved to Sweden, was it hard for you to adapt? You mentioned the language, how you guys haven't maybe fully learned Swedish. What kind of challenges did you guys run into, or maybe still have?
Yeah, I think obviously at the beginning it's a lot about bureaucracy. So you have to register and you have to find a place to live. And in Sweden, it's also a little bit more difficult to find like rental properties, like at least, for a decent price. And then the problem here is as well that everything is quite short term. So I don't know, it's a very Swedish issue. So the best you can actually do is buy a property, a house or an apartment, something like that. And so we kind of rented for a year. So that was like a family actually moved to Spain to test out what it is like a Swedish family living in Spain because they don't like the cold. A lot of Swedes don't like the cold here. So they moved to warmer countries. But they came back after a year and we had to move out. And then we decided we just went for it and bought a house, a townhouse. I mean, everything was a bit of a challenge, and the language is still a challenge, but it's also made easy for you here because almost everyone speaks English. So the day-to-day life is quite easy. Um, so people will basically just adapt to you. Although I know that that people prefer to speak in Swedish. Like I actually have little challenges here and there again because the teacher of my daughter now, um, I think she speaks English. I've heard her, but I think probably the confidence is not there. So when she says she would like to just write and speak in Swedish, and I can answer in English. So it's a bit of a challenge for me. Or when I go to like parents' evenings and stuff like that, everything is in Swedish. But at the same time, I'm also, again, taking that challenge on and think, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to learn more Swedish. I mean, I do learn weekly kind of on my own Swedish, and I try to read and that kind of stuff to improve my Swedish. The only thing which I definitely lack a little bit is like talking to people. Um, but hopefully, my plan is really in a few years it will just be there, like especially with the kids of my children. Like they don't speak English yet at that age, so I'm like testing it a lot with kids. Yes.
Do you think that the fact that everyone speaks English so well in Sweden gets in the way of the learning as well? Like, is it hard to practice with people? Do they switch to English a lot when you try?
Um, to be fair, like I think it's actually just me, like because people are really open to talk in Swedish as soon as they know, or even if like when you tell them. I have neighbors, and I did tell them, I want to improve, and now they really like. So next time I see you, let's just talk in Swedish, and I'm like, shocked. But so they're quite open, like to support you with the Swedish. Like, and if you start talking in Swedish, I think like maybe French people would just like talk in English because they realize, okay, your French is not really good. But here, I think if I try to talk in Swedish, and I have done it a few times, but then when they say something back, I don't understand. I'm like, oh my god, shit. Um, but yeah, no, they are quite supportive. So I think that it wouldn't be too bad. Like it's just me. I should be more confident and dare to speak. But I had that in every country. Well, I only speak, you know, really German and English. So when I moved to London, it, I mean, there I didn't have a chance, right? Because no one spoke German, so I had to speak English.
You're kind of forced to learn.
It has good, positive advantages and disadvantages, right? Like it's easier to just talk in English, and like Sweden is a great country where you can use your English, but at the same time, that makes it harder to learn proper Swedish.
Yeah, it is a unique issue that exists in places that have a high level of English, where it's like you can get by, but are you surviving versus thriving?
Yeah,
People are always a little bit more, what's the word? There's more connections to be made when you're speaking in someone's native language, right? I
absolutely.
think that you could get by in lots of places, including Germany, right? And especially in the more international cities, you
Yeah,
could easily live there with just speaking English. But does that get in the way of you getting to know the local people and understand the culture and all that kind of stuff? That's always like the big question. I can do it, but is it the best thing, like in terms of cultural integration, right?
absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when I went to Germany for the exchange, I was taking German classes as well. And before I went there, I made a rule for myself that I would only speak German with German people.
Wow, that's good.
And so the whole time I was there, I only spoke German, but sometimes people would respond in English. The majority responded in German. But sometimes people would be like, oh, it's clear that this isn't your first language, so I'm just going to speak English. And I was really stubborn. I was like, you can speak English if you want to, but I'm not going to speak English. So I would just speak German. They would just speak English, and we'd have like this weird backwards conversation.
That's a good attitude, actually.
I mean, you can't control what other people do, right? And so you just like make a goal for yourself
Yeah,
and just stick with that. And if you want to practice, you can practice.